Good evening. I'd like to call to order the September 10th, 2019 City Council meeting. Clerk, could I have a roll call, please?
Mayor Wright?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown?
Here.
Councilmember Krupa? Here. Councilmember Meyer? Here. Councilmember Percival?
Here.
Thank you.
Please stand for the invocation and pledge of allegiance. Invocation led by Karen Mackey with Interfaith Council. Our dear, kind, loving Father in heaven, we come before Thee at the start of this Hemet City Council meeting. And as we do so, Father, we ask for Thy guidance, Thy direction, and Thy inspiration as we make important decisions for our fair city. We especially pray for the members of this council that Thou will bless them and help them in their lives as they do this service for our community. We pray for our community, Father. We pray that it might be blessed and watched over in all the calamities that could possibly fall upon it, that Thou will bless us and help us in dealing with these issues. We especially pray, Father, for our good firemen and policemen who serve us. Bless them and help them to have inspiration as they serve us, that they will be kept safe from harm, and help them to have inspiration in doing so. Father, we also pray for our businesses, that they might grow, that they might have prosperity, and that they will grow and help our city grow also. We pray for our teachers who serve and teach our youth. Bless them and help them that they will lead our youth in the way that it needs to be done, Father. We, at this time, we especially pray for our families, and we pray for our youth. Bless them and help them that they will have a desire to live moral, good lives and be a good part of our community, and help this community to grow with unity for all people, that we might have love and kindness in our hearts for those of all races and genders and ethnicities and sexual orientations, that we might be unified in our love for one another, and strive to show that through kindness and understanding for all those around us. And Father, we again ask for Thy guidance and direction this night at this meeting, and we do so in the name of Thy beloved Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
And on the eve of the 18th anniversary of the terrorist attack, we lost so many good citizens of this country, first responders. So in their honor, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 4A, City Attorney's Report of Closed Session.
Thank you, Mayor. The City Council did recess into closed session at 6 o'clock. Before it recessed, it did add one item of subsequent need, an additional item of existing litigation. It was the Toussaint versus City of Hemet case. The reason for adding that is that we have a mandatory settlement conference coming up on Friday, and the city's excess carrier wanted to discuss additional authority with the council. We have not reached that item yet. We'll get that at the end. There were two other items of existing litigation on. We have addressed the Gustavo Rivera case. You had a briefing from legal counsel. There was no reportable action on that item. The Gregory Adams case will come at the end. You had a conference with your real property negotiator. Direction was given to real property negotiators. There was no other reportable action. And then with regard to the other items, conference with labor negotiator, conference with legal counsel, and one anticipated item of litigation, public employee performance evaluations for city manager and city attorney. Did not reach those. Those will be held over until the end of the session tonight. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Next item, number 5, communications from the public. Anyone who wishes to speak during this public comment period on a particular item will be required to fill out a speaker slip.
There will be a 3-minute per person time limit for all comments, including public or quasi-judicial hearings. Written comments on any item may be submitted to the city clerk to be included in the meeting record. All who wish to speak, including council members and staff, need to be recognized. Members of the public shall comply with adopted rules of decorum, resolution number 4545. And please, if you will, make sure you mute your cell phones while we're in the meeting. Thank you. City Clerk, do we have any requests to speak?
Yes, we have two tonight, Joe Males and Ron Imel.
Okay. Mr. Mills?
Don't start my minutes yet. Testing, okay, not yet, please. Mayor Wright,
Yes.
Pro Tem Mayor Brown, and City Council. I have a pre-typed letter here I'd like to read off to you, if you don't mind, concerning the American Legion Post 53. This is an incredible opportunity for growth in our post. Our post is now accurately representing the diverse population of veterans that we serve in Emmett Valley. I am incredibly excited about the potential this unlocks for us in the years to come. We are stronger together. We are confident that this change in leadership will attract not only the younger veterans, but also those from diverse backgrounds. We have great respect and allegiance for the American Legion and for the local community that we serve. Our culture has changed to be more welcoming to veterans of all nationalities, races, ethnicity, you know what I mean, regardless of sex. Our commitment in mentoring youth and sponsoring programs in our community is stronger than ever. We sponsor 4 to 5 boys every year at Boys State and 4 to 5 girls every year at Girls State. Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, and Junior ROTC. We participate in community parades, veterans parades, 4th of July parades, Christmas parades, Thanksgiving Day parades, October, Halloween Lane in Old Town, and we don't care if we're first or last in the parade. Remember that. Our dinners consist of Friday night dinners. The first Friday is given by the Riders, which is a Southern fried chicken dinner. The second is given by the Legion, which is second Friday, and that varies. And the third dinner is third Friday dinner is a taco dinner given by the auxiliary, and our fourth Friday is the spaghetti dinner given by our sons. We will be hosting a comedy show October 5th, and doors open at 6 p.m. Dinner and alcohol will be available. We have a day license that we requested. On October 22nd, Clover Lane and Veterans Mobility Projects will be giving a wheelchair to a needy veteran at our post. We will have our second comedy show on November 2nd, and the doors will open at 6 with dinner and alcohol served. Our Spirit of the Law Awards will be on November 9th, starting at 3 p.m. I am so proud to say that my son, Nicholas B. Males, there's a award given in his name, and I'm so proud because his name will live forever.
What's the date on that again?
I'm sorry?
What's the date on that again?
That's November 9th at 3 p.m. We are Veterans Helping Veterans. We appreciate your support. And my name is Joe Mills, USMC veteran, commander of Post 53.
You made it in 3 minutes.
Great. Got a little nervous there. Yeah, thank you.
All the information.
Thank you.
Mr. Emmel?
Hi,
Good evening.
Mayor Pro Tem and Council. My name is Ronnie Imel. I'm a public servant, kind of like you guys. I've been working here in the Valley for about 21 years as a Veteran Service Officer for the Post, for the American Legion Post and the VFW Post. I started a foundation called Veterans Paying It Forward. It's a nonprofit, and the whole idea is to bring recognition to veterans. And on this day, this eve of 9/11, I'd like to point out a first responder here. Thank you. Thank you. And thanks to all the first responders that are still suffering from 9/11. I'm here kind of without really being prepared, but I'm here to talk about something. It's called taxation. Our veterans have been exempt in so many areas of taxation for 100 years. Our organizations, both the American Legion and the VFW, are failing all across the United States. They really are. There are some veteran organizations out on the coast. There's a very well-to-do, rich one, if you will. But most of the American Legions and VFW organizations are failing. And they're failing for a lot of reasons. I'm not going to go into them. But I want to talk about something that might transpire right here. I'm kind of assured it's not, but I have to say the words and tell you a story. Our post has been in existence, either the first or second oldest post in California. It's post 53. I don't know where the other 52 went, but anyway, we're in that category. And I'm going to rush to make that 3 minutes. I'm going to get out of here. But we've been a dry post. A dry post meaning we have not been a alcohol providing post. We have been a dry post. And we have found out, we recognize the fact that we're not raising money the way we used to. We are increasing in size. We have one of the largest memberships we've had in probably 10 years right now. We're out soliciting, let's call it a new face for our post. But we're also in need of raising funds. And that need comes to beginning to serve alcohol on a private basis. We're a closed organization in that members have to come in and be members, and people from the outside have to be signed in when they come into our post. We have a sign-up sheet, and even without serving alcoholic beverages, they still sign in to our post. So we're a closed-door post, so to speak. And we're asking, and we have already applied for the state ABC license. And in that process, we come to find out that we're going to fall into a category in HIMIT under, I think it's called 90.90 of the code, the HIMIT, what's it called? Anyway, it's a code.
You have 30 seconds.
Enforcement code or something like that. Anyway, within that code, they're going to want something like $10,000 for a permit. And we're asking, we're begging, we're pleading, please don't charge us that fee. Now, we say that as we read that documentation, there must be 30 organizations or people that can be exempt. We're not even on that list. Veterans are not even on that list. And so just think of us when this application comes through. We're worried a little bit. We're shaking. We're, oh no, this can't happen to us, not us. But there are other organizations within HIMIT that have been allowed their alcohol permits and not paid a $10,000 fee. So.
And I assume those were nonprofits.
Okay. So we'll get beyond that. And I would just like to say I'm really honored to be standing here in front of you. I know all the great work you do. And I want to echo something about a parade. If you want our organization to ride in the back of the parade, we'll ride in the back. And if you want us to pick up the streets on the way, we volunteer to pick up the streets. We are a service organization. We're not prima donnas, okay? We love all of you and we love HIMIT. Thank you so very much.
Do we have anyone else?
We have one more, Debbie Dina. Debbie?
I'm sorry, what's the last name?
D-E-N-A, Dina.
I'll make it really quick. I just wanted to put this in before the EMWD does their presentation, which I've seen Kevin present on. My only question is, how does that affect the earthquake fault? What you guys are releasing the water in for the groundwater, just because of where it's located.
Address us. Thank you.
Sorry, did you hear that?
Not well.
Okay. My question was what they are going to be doing, releasing the water, the treated water for the groundwater, replenishing the aquifer. I was just having a question. How does that affect the earthquake fault?
Thank you. Okay. Seems to be the end of public comment. Now we'll go on to our next item, presentation Groundwater Reliability Plus from Eastern Municipal Water District. Introducing Joe Mawad, Assistant General Manager, and Kevin Pearson, Public Affairs Officer with EMWD.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council. Thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight to share with you information on Eastern Municipal Water District's Groundwater Reliability Plus program. I do have a brief PowerPoint presentation, and then I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
In all fairness, it is kind of tricky.
So Eastern Municipal Water District was established in 1950. We are the easternmost member of the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California. We are one of 26 member agencies, Metropolitan being the wholesaler for Southern California. We serve a population of approximately 825,000 people within our service area. Essentially, our service area extends from Moreno Valley up north down to Temecula in the south, over to Hemet, San Jacinto in the east, and over to Mead Valley on the west side and the I-215 corridor. We're somewhat unique in that we are both a retail provider of water, wastewater, and recycled water, but we are also a wholesaler. We have a number of agencies, including the city of Hemet, who are essentially retailers, and we wholesale water to the city, as well as Rancho California Water District and other entities within our service area. As I mentioned, we service an area that stretches approximately 555 square miles. One of the key statistics on this slide is that our service area is only 38% built out. So we recognize that there is a significant amount of growth yet to occur over the next several decades within our service area. Thus, we are actively planning to make sure that we have a long-term sustainable water supply to our communities. In terms of our services, as I mentioned, we provide retail and wholesale water service. We are a retailer for over 150,000 customers on the water side, and I'll get into the specifics of our water supply portfolio here shortly. But essentially, we have both local water supply as well as imported supply for Metropolitan Water District. And we have, as you're aware, out here in San Jacinto, we have a number of groundwater wells. And we also operate a desalination program over on the Menifee, Paris North area where there's a brackish groundwater basin. On the wastewater service side, we provide sewer and wastewater services to over 246,000 accounts. You'll notice a discrepancy between the number of accounts we have on the wastewater and water, and that is primarily because of the water retailers within our service area, such as yourself, and such as Rancho California Water District, who provide water but not necessarily wastewater service. And then on the recycled water front, we are one of the leading agencies in the country relative to service to our recycled water customers. We're very proud of the investments that we've made over several decades in the recycled water infrastructure. We sold last year over 35,000 acre-feet of recycled water, and it makes up a significant component of our overall water supply portfolio. About 60 to 65% of our recycled water sales are to our agricultural customers. There's over 10,000 acres of farmland out in our service area that utilizes recycled water to irrigate their land. So I mentioned our water supply portfolio. This represents last year's demands, and as you'll note, about half of our water supply is imported from Metropolitan, and that primarily comes from the Colorado River as well as the State Water Project or the Bay Delta. The other half is locally produced, and about a third of our water supply is recycled. In the absence of recycled water, we would in fact be required to import a much greater amount of water from Metropolitan. This 50-50 split is key for us. As I mentioned before, we're only 38% built out. As we continue our growth over the next many years and decades, we want to make sure we invest in our local water supplies so that we don't have to increasingly rely on imported supplies to meet our growing demands. And that is what I want to talk to you about tonight, is one component of our local water supply program is our groundwater reliability program. You'll notice here, before I get into the specifics of the groundwater reliability program, our desalters, as I mentioned before, we have a brackish groundwater basin, essentially high salts in that basin. It's otherwise non-usable aquifer. We currently produce about 5% of our portfolio. Having said that, we are under construction on a third desalter, and once completed, we will be doubling that amount of production once it's completed in 2021. In terms of groundwater, again, we're making significant investments, not only in additional infrastructure and additional wells, but also in programs to increase the availability of groundwater supply. So our Groundwater Reliability Plus program is our umbrella program. It encompasses various initiatives and projects, including groundwater sustainability, water banking, and the Purified Water Replenishment Project, which I will get into later in my presentation with a lot more details and specifics. On the lower side of the exhibit, you'll see our water use efficiency program. We're very active when it comes to conservation, our educational program, our turf replacement and removal. All of that falls under efficiency. Also, our Healthy Sewers educational initiative, where we again do a significant outreach to our community, making sure they're aware not to dispose of pharmaceuticals or any other products in the sewer system, because ultimately that sewer is treated and is provided as recycled water. And then, of course, as I mentioned, our extensive recycled water system throughout our district, and then the desalination program. So tonight, I do want to focus more on the water banking component as well as the Purified Water Replenishment Project. On water banking, as you may imagine, essentially what it means is that during wet years, as we had last winter, when there is an excess of available water, be it from up north in the Bay Delta or from the Colorado River, we have an opportunity to bring that water into our region and store that water underground. And later, during drought conditions, we would essentially extract that water. It's essentially like a savings account at a bank. That's really in a nutshell what water banking is all about. And that is a key component of what I'm about to describe here as far as the facilities and infrastructure that we've commenced constructing in the Hemet-San Jacinto Valley. So the program in itself, in terms of infrastructure, includes construction of replenishment basins. So you can bring that water and essentially let it percolate in the ground down to the aquifer. I do want to note that our recharge program is essentially replenishment bases. We don't have any injection wells planned, and maybe that goes back to the question earlier about potential for seismic activity. We are not creating any kind of pressure underground. We're simply bringing water in, putting it in a large basin, and letting it naturally percolate. So there is no increased likelihood of any kind of seismic activity associated with our program. In addition to the basins, to let the water replenish the groundwater aquifers, once we store that water underground, we need to have a means to extract that water. So as you're aware, we've been drilling a number of additional wells in the valley, and we are almost complete with the drilling activity. We have to, of course, equip those wells. And the picture here shown on the slide shows what a typical completed well would look like. Essentially, it looks like a building with plumbing on the outside. Our program that we are advancing will allow us to bank up to 7,000 acre-feet per year. And we have the ability, we have the storage ability in the basin to bank up to 3 consecutive years, or up to 21,000 acre-feet total. That water then will be available to us during drought conditions. As you know, the last drought, Metropolitan imposed shortage allocations to all its member agencies. By enhancing our available groundwater supply and overall local supplies, we're able to mitigate the impacts of the drought and shortage allocations to our customers. We've secured significant funding to help us advance this program. In all, for this program, we've secured $14 million, $13 million from SAPA through Prop 1. We're very proud of the fact that we're so successful in securing that level of grant support. And we also secured an additional grant from the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation. So what I wanted to show you is the location of the facilities that we're describing. As you're familiar, we currently operate through the Water Master, the existing integrated recharge and recovery program and the ponds within the river that you see there to the right. That is an existing program. In fact, we're currently recharging imported water from Metropolitan, and the City of Hemet, along with Eastern, the City of San Jacinto, and Lake Hemet are all joint partners through the Water Master in that active program. On average, collectively, we bring in about 7,500 acre-feet per year under that program. What we are proposing is, in fact, above and beyond that program. What you see here in the red shaped 40-acre lot along Mountain Avenue is our proposed replenishment basin. That will allow us to replenish the groundwater aquifer by bringing the water and then letting it percolate. We purchased that property several years ago, and last week our board of directors awarded a $14 million construction contract to commence construction of those improvements along Mountain Avenue within that property. So the project is moving forward as far as construction. In addition to the replenishment basin that I'm describing, as I mentioned earlier, we need the extraction wells. And the wells that you see there, well 201, 202, and 203, as you're probably aware, we've completed substantial drilling of those wells. We are in the final stages of well development for well 203. We should be completed by next month, at which time we will be removing this temporary sound wall that we erected to mitigate the noise impacts. In addition, what you'll see there is on Hewitt and Evans at that corner, we have the blending and treatment. We don't believe we're going to need that for this first phase of the program. The water quality that we are seeing within the wells that we've drilled is actually better than what we expected. And the groundwater production that we're seeing from these wells is higher than what we anticipated. So we're hopeful that we're not going to need any additional treatment beyond the usual disinfection or chlorination of the water before it's served to our customers. This is a rendering of what the Mountain Avenue replenishment basin will look like from the exterior. We work very closely with the City of San Jacinto to develop a walking trail around the perimeter of this facility, including the proposed landscaping. Once completed through this construction project that I mentioned earlier, then we will turn over the walking trail to the City of San Jacinto for maintenance. Associated with the program is the need to bring in physically more water into the valley. And as such, we need to construct a new turnout from the Metropolitan Water District, as well as a large diameter pipeline. As you're aware, we currently have an existing pipeline to bring water into the integrated recharge and recovery ponds in the San Jacinto River. But that has a limited capacity, so we need to build a parallel pipeline to that. And that's what that blue line on the exhibit shows. That's phase one of the proposed pipeline project. We would have a turnout over at the intersection of Esplanade and Warren. At that location, we would then start the pipeline along Esplanade. We would go down south along Sanderson and then along Commonwealth over to Kirby. That would represent the first phase of the pipeline, and the pipeline at that reach would be 60 inches in diameter. Phase two would be the yellow line, which would then extend the pipeline all the way over to the recharge basins. And what you'll see there over in the corner is, in fact, the Mountain Avenue West, shown in the turquoise, and then the other future recharge basins that ultimately we plan to construct as part of future phases. In terms of schedule for the pipeline, we are currently in the final design stage. In fact, we've met with the City of Hemet staff as well as City of San Jacinto staff to coordinate the alignment as well as the development of the plans, the required traffic control for construction of the pipeline, as well as utilities and other conditions along the alignment. We anticipate to go out to bid early next year with construction commencement in April of 2020, with approximately 2 years to complete the first phase of the pipeline. I want to turn our focus to the purified water replenishment. As you're aware, essentially the program consists of taking tertiary Title 22 recycled water from specifically in this case, from our San Jacinto reclamation plant, providing advanced treatment to that water, including purification of that water. Then taking that water and conveying it to our recharge facility, blending it with other sources of water, including the raw water we bring in from Metropolitan under the Integrated Recharge and Recovery Program, as well as Title 22 recycled water. Letting that water percolate through the soil, and then that water then will get to the aquifer. And then there's very clear state guidelines as far as that water having a certain residence time in the aquifer before we can extract it downstream, disinfect it again, and then introduce it into our water distribution system. So that's what the Purified Water Program represents. The first phase that we are proposing would consist of a total of 4,000 acre-feet per year. So it's not a significant amount of water, but is a very important component of our program. We believe this is the first step in additional expansion of the Purified Water Program efforts. Of the 4,000, 2,000 will be purified through an advanced treatment facility, and the other 2,000 will essentially be tertiary recycled water. So do want to share with you an educational video that we put together to help explain the program components. So just to voice over a bit, what you're seeing is this is conceptually drilling a well that would tap into the groundwater aquifer, extracting that water, going through water treatment or purification and disinfection, serving it to our customers for drinking purposes and other purposes as well. Some of that water used indoors ends up in the sewer system. In the sewer system, that water or that sewer is conveyed to a reclamation plant where it's cleaned up and treated. That treated recycled water then is conveyed to various recycled water customers, including agricultural, industrial, landscape irrigation throughout our service area. And then a portion of that will be conveyed to our advanced purification facility, where it will be highly treated, conveyed to a recharge pond, and then ultimately that water would commingle and blend with other sources of water in our groundwater basin. So our water purification treatment process consists of multiple sequential steps, starting with microfiltration, where any bacteria or viruses are removed, followed by reverse osmosis membranes that removes salinity and other constituents, including dissolved salts. Once that water is then treated through RO, that water is then conveyed to the replenishment ponds. As I mentioned, the Mountain Avenue facility being the primary replenishment facility for us. At that location, the water will go through essentially additional filtration through the ground. As the water travels through the soil naturally provides additional filtration for that water. And then it blends with other sources of water that I mentioned earlier. And then as the water is extracted, after at least 6 months of residence time in the ground, then that water is then disinfected again and introduced into our potable water system. So the program has multiple benefits. As I mentioned, significant reason for our investment in local water supply is to provide long-term sustainable local supplies that would allow us to deal with drought conditions in the future. And we see this as a drought-proof local water supply. This also enhances the groundwater quality. By going through reverse osmosis, you're removing the salts. You're actually improving the quality of the water within the groundwater basin. And by increasing the level of water within the groundwater basin, you're in fact benefiting all the pumpers within the region, because there is less lift, if you will, or less amount of lifting that you have to do for the water, thus less energy. So there is a benefit in replenishing the groundwater basin. And of course, we're increasing the yield from this basin, and we do so by utilizing proven technology. This program that I'm describing, the Purified Water Replenishment Program, has been in place in Orange County for decades, successfully operated. And it's also been implemented at many other agencies throughout the state and throughout the country. So in terms of schedule, our water banking program is well underway. We've completed the environmental CEQA as well as permitting in 2018. The design was completed this year, and as I mentioned, we're already under construction on components of the program. The wells are well underway with the drilling. After completing the drilling next month, we will be coming back later next year to do the equipping, the actual installation of the mechanical, electrical facilities. And then, of course, the Mountain Avenue West was awarded for construction by our board last week. And we anticipate that to be completed within about a year and a half. The Purified Water Replenishment Program, the public outreach has been ongoing, and we continue to do so to educate our community about the program. The CEQA permitting is starting, that process starting this year, and will be completed next year. We've completed the preliminary design of the facilities, including the advanced purification facility as well as the pipelines. And we plan to advance the final design this year with completion by the end of next year. And then our target for completion of construction is 2023. So I know I went over a lot of information. I do value and appreciate your time tonight, but I would be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have on our program.
Also, do you have any questions or comments? Okay, Councilman Krupa.
Thank you for the presentation. And it is one that I've seen before. However, this didn't occur to me until just now. When you're talking about the blending of the imported water, you're going to be blending State Water Project and Colorado River water in that, or is it just from the State Water Project?
Just State Water Project.
Okay, that came into mind.
Yes.
I'm going to stipulate a judgment
Yes.
says we don't touch the water from the Colorado River to put in the aqueduct.
That's correct.
Or put in the, yeah.
That's correct. And I apologize if I perhaps misquoted, but we do currently import treated water from Colorado River,
Right.
as well as the State Water Project. But for groundwater basin replenishment, you are absolutely correct, Councilmember Krupa. Per the stipulated judgment,
Right.
we are only allowed to bring in State Water Project because of the salinity issue.
Very good. This is a great project. I think it will only enhance the aquifer, and as far as the earthquakes, probably drying the water out causes just as much ground movement as putting water back in again. Maybe putting water back in will stabilize some of that movement. But it's just a great project and will greatly enhance the aquifer out here.
No, I agree, and you're right. I mean, we're all collectively working together to make sure that we don't overdraft the basin. Because if there is overdraft, and there's continual overdraft, then there is a likelihood of settlement. And so there is likelihood of potential damage to facilities, if you will, if we see that settlement. But fortunately, that's not the case. I think collectively we work through the water master to make sure that we're not only stabilizing the groundwater basin levels, but we're slowly improving upon it.
Right, thank you.
Sure.
Any other member of council have a question? Comment? Representative Brown?
Yeah, just a question. First of all, thank you for the presentations. Very informative. On your phase one of the pipeline project that's going to parallel Esplanade, I understand that the city of San Jacinto is undertaking a road project along there as well. So you're coordinating with them, and you're not going to interfere with their project as well as what your project is for the pipeline?
Excellent question, Mayor Pro Tem. Yes, you're right. We are coordinating very closely with their management and engineering staff. They are finalizing the acquisition of the additional right-of-way to be able to expand Esplanade. Our plan is that we will be ahead of their road improvement project. Our plan is that our pipeline will be constructed ahead of that. So we're working very closely with them to make sure that we in fact complete the pipeline prior to any type of road improvement or extension.
Approximately how far from the current northern edge of the roadway?
We are outside of the paved traveled way. We are in the dirt currently. I think with the city acquiring the additional right-of-way, it'll obviously allow us to construct the pipeline with very limited, if no need, for temporary construction easements. I think it's going to be beneficial for the project that the city is planning to acquire the additional right-of-way. But regardless, we're currently outside of the paved section.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I have a question for you. And that's on the north side,
I believe it is on the north side, yes.
not on the south side? Because there's a ditch on the south side.
Yeah, I think it is on the north side is where the city is acquiring the additional property, yes.
And that's like a big thoroughfare on the right of way to school, so that'll be a nice mess.
Well, and that's why we want to be outside of the traveled way. We want to be outside of the paved section. And I think once the city completes this acquisition of those properties, we are going to look at the opportunity to even move it further away. We can't do so until the city has completed the acquisition of the additional right-of-way. But we are working closely with the city. Once they complete that, we will meet with their engineering team and look at an opportunity. We agree with your assessment. We want to be very sensitive to any kind of temporary impacts, traffic or pedestrian impacts. So we will do everything we can working closely with the city to mitigate that.
John, what's the timeline for that we're looking at, the timeline for that construction on Esplanade?
Sure. So we anticipate to award a construction contract in April of next year. And the entire duration of the construction will be approximately 2 years. Hopefully sooner, but that's our preliminary assessment. It's a 2-year duration. That includes not just Esplanade, that includes a section on Sanderson and Commonwealth. On Esplanade, I would have to go back and see what portion of that construction duration, but it would be, if I had to estimate, it's probably at least a year along Esplanade.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the information. Appreciate you coming out and giving this information to us and the public. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Now we move on to item 6, receive and file. May I have a motion to receive and file the warrant register 6A and investment portfolio 6B?
Move approval.
Please vote. And that's approved 5-0. Now we go on to the consent calendar. All consent calendar items will be acted upon by a single action of the City Council unless otherwise requested by an individual council member for separate consideration. Consent calendar are, Are there any members of the council that would like to pull a consent item?
The minutes, because we have an amended version.
Yes. And the amended version has been provided, so.
Yes. So long as that's the one we're approving.
Yes, the amended minutes were provided at the dais as well as an emailed copy as well.
And then I'm going to pull 7C.
Okay, 7C. It's pulled.
So I'll make a motion to approve items 7A and 7B.
Please vote. And that's approved 5-0. Thank you. Item 7C.
Just if we could have a verbal update on what this is.
Sure. So as you know, Mayor Wright is the chair of the executive committee of WRCOG, and I am the chair of the TAC, meaning that all the cities in Western Riverside County, all the city managers get together and are members of the TAC. So as a result, I am very involved with WRCOG items. And so the item before you, WRCOG is taking a leadership role in involving itself with California Clean Air Day. The resolution in front of you today essentially provides the city of Hemet with a free donated tree that WRCOG will partner with the city of Hemet to identify a location and plant that tree. And so that's essentially what you have before you. WRCOG has recommended that all member agencies adopt the resolution if they're interested in being a part of that program. So that's what you have before you today.
So do we know where the tree's going to go and what kind of tree it's going to be?
We do not, but we can have more conversations about that.
Do you know when it's going to take place so we can all be here in downtown?
So it would be probably sometime in October, and we'll go ahead and provide as needed backup or more information at a council meeting so we can talk about potential locations. I'm sure that Public Works probably has some options as to where we might be able to plant that tree.
We always want more trees.
Yes, we do. Thank you.
Thank you. And if I can have a motion for that item?
I will move approval on, so long as we're notified so we can come and watch the tree be planted.
Absolutely.
Okay. Do we have a second by Mayor Pro Tem Brown? Please vote. And that's approved 5-0. Thank you. I don't think, okay, public hearing. We will ask for a staff report.
Mayor and council members, I'd be happy to do that. I'm going to have Stephanie Gutierrez of my office give the staff report. She did most of the research and drafting on this, so I felt that she should come and present to you. Before we do that, however, I want to clarify what we're asking you to do. There's some different phrasing on here. Tonight, we'd like you to introduce this ordinance, read by title only, waive further reading, and then adopt the ordinance. This is an interim-urgency ordinance. We don't have a second reading. It goes into effect immediately or in the time that's stated in the ordinance. But we do need to introduce it. We have to read it by title. We want to waive further reading so the clerk doesn't have to read the entire ordinance, and then we'll adopt it tonight. When you get to a point of making a motion, if you decide to do that, I'll read that language first so we don't get confused. With that, I'll turn it over to Stephanie.
Hi, good evening, Council. So as Eric had mentioned, I'm here to kind of walk you through this interim urgency ordinance. What the ordinance before you is doing is we're extending the moratorium that you had already put in place by adopting the urgency ordinance on August 13th. So by way of background, City Council adopted ordinance number 2019-1959 pursuant to the Government Code. So that moratorium imposed a temporary moratorium on the cultivation of industrial hemp and related activities. So by law, that ordinance that was adopted on the 13th will automatically expire 45 days. So we're coming up to those 45 days. So before you is an extension to make sure that staff still has plenty of time to review and study all the consequences and different issues that could arise from industrial hemp cultivation within the city limits. So on August 13th, we did have information from Riverside County saying that it seemed as if we had registered sites within the city limits of Hemet. I had been in contact with the commissioner's office, but after further contact, further research, I did want to point out that we do not have sites registered for industrial hemp at this time, but there are 2 that are within the city's sphere of influence. So although it's not within the city's jurisdictional limits, we still have to kind of keep an eye because that can affect what's going on within your city's limits. So as you can see on Exhibit A, those are the 2 registered sites that are within the city's sphere of influence. So before you, if we don't adopt this extension, if after the 45 days have expired, Riverside County would have the permission of the city to have sites registered within the city limits. So the purpose of this is to kind of keep that in check just until we get a good idea of where California and the federal law is going with industrial hemp. So for that, we have like a few reasons that are laid out more clear in the ordinance. But the 3 main things that we are worried about when we're talking about industrial hemp cultivation is that there are no permanent or adequate California or federal laws in place. As of right now, the federal law won't even be addressed or put into place. They're anticipating until the end of this calendar year. So we have nothing in place. Right now, we are still functioning off of the 2014 Farm Bill. So it's still a little messy with that. In terms of California, California has only permanently adopted registration fees and renewal fees for industrial hemp growth. So that's the only permanent law that we have in place. Right now they're charging $900, or Riverside County is able to charge $900 for registration of sites within the county. But the only other laws that we have in place are just temporary laws on an emergency basis that will need to be addressed before the end of the calendar year regarding testing and sampling of the industrial hemp. So another part is that industrial hemp and cannabis, they're derivatives of the same plant. As of now, there's not really a way to test or differentiate between the 2. Anything past 0.03% of industrial hemp would probably be considered cannabis at this point. Per statute, industrial hemp cannot exceed a THC amount of 0.3%. So not having a real way to test that, that's also an issue for us in case there are, considerations to allow commercial cannabis activity. It could intermingle the 2. And as the city is very well aware, we are currently spending a significant amount of money to enforce that cannabis prohibition we have in place right now. So authorizing and adopting this ordinance would just help staff really research, allow the state to kind of get some real regulations in place before city council determines the nature of what you want to allow within the city. So,
Council, if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them. If not, we would like you to open the public hearing.
Okay. I do have a question.
Go ahead.
On the property on South San Jacinto Street, how big is that property? Because that's basically all residential.
So I don't have in terms of how large the properties are. I can get that information and definitely provide it to you. We just know that those were the properties that were registered already through Riverside County.
Okay. Yeah, that's all houses.
My question about the registration, these houses were registered by the property owners? Is that how they got identified?
Right, right. And all of the registration sites, just so you know, it's public record. So not only does the California State see, or the California Food and Agricultural Department, they have a link online that you can access and see what has been registered in what county, and you can always contact the Riverside County office as well.
Thank you.
The state site can be a little difficult because I think it references by area code, and it says Hemet,
Right.
even though they're not in the city of Hemet because obviously they have more jurisdiction. So you got to get down and either find the APN number or the street address.
Okay, this time, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to make comments in favor of this item? Hearing none, is there anyone in the audience in opposition to this item? Hearing none, I will go ahead and close the public hearing. Any more questions by council? Okay, so at this point, we'll read
We would have,
waive the first reading and introduce ordinance by title only. Correct?
and we would need a motion to introduce, read by title only, waive further reading, and adopt ordinance number 2019-1560.
Okay, may I have a motion, please?
So moved.
We have a first and a second. Please vote. And that is approved 5-0. Thank you, council.
And then if we can have the clerk read the title.
This is a reading and adoption of the ordinance number 2019-1960. There was a typo error on the actual number of the ordinance. It is 1960. An interim urgency ordinance of the City of Hemet extending a temporary moratorium on the cultivation of industrial hemp by establishing agricultural research institutions and others within the boundaries of the City of Hemet to August 12, 2020.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to item number 9, discussion action items. 9A, resolution awarding the purchase of the Panasonic tablet and laptop computers and related hardware. Chief Webb?
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. It's my pleasure tonight to bring before you this item. It's a resolution authorizing the police department for a computer upgrade. Just to give you a little bit of history of where we're at, back in 2015, Microsoft came out and announced that they would not support Windows 7 operating system in 5 years, which is 2020. So all of our computers were operating on Windows 7, of course, at that time, and we're fastly approaching 2020, so we need to do something. The reason that we need to upgrade to the new operating system is because cybersecurity for law enforcement is obviously very important. If we do not move to a new operating system that provides security and maintenance and security patches and all that stuff from the from Microsoft, then we will not be allowed to access databases that we use every day in the workplace, such as the DMV, CalID, DOJ, CLETS. Everything that we touch needs to have those security items before they will let us have access to their databases. So because we knew this was coming up, we took a small group of employees, looked at what our options were. Our main goals were to lower the total number of computers in our department. As you know, I'm always very cautious of our internal services charges. So we have a tremendous amount of computers in the police department, both in our vehicles and in the station. So we wanted to make sure that we could possibly lower the total number of computers to assist with that. And we also wanted to make sure that they were a little bit more versatile and portable. So we looked at the tablets. Is what we're now going to do is we're going to cut out a bunch of computers, and we're going to have portable tablets that we can take from our vehicles and move them into the stations and set them in docking stations. And I can have one at my desk, and when I go home for the weekend to do work, I can take my computer, my laptop home, and bring it back on Monday and dock it. So it's a really good, I think, way to be more efficient and be more versatile. Some of the things that are going to happen is we're going to move away from air cards. I had a quick conversation with Scott Underwood from IT today. He estimated, 3 or 4 times a week that our officers bring the air cards in for their laptops. So what that does is that takes time away from not only his staff, but my staff that's off the, they're out of their beats. They're standing there waiting for the computer